Welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. Today is Monday, May the 16th, 2022. And our calling number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you in the queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And we'll give Michael just a moment to get dialed in. And I'll just say that someone was using the iPhone app and found a little glitch, so there'll be another change coming in on that. I'd appreciate you all using the app and then seeing if you run into anything that's not working and let me know so we can make changes, whether it's the iPhone or the Android, and get it all totally up to speed. And we do appreciate you. And we have a nice rainy day here this afternoon. Ari is a little bit under the weather with some sinus stuff going on, but she's a remarkable little girl. Glad to have her back today. We will be here today and tomorrow live, but then we're going to be on the road. We're going to leave actually tomorrow night after they pick Aria up and try to get 4 hours under our belt. Michael will be doing the support group for those that are in the Mind Shifters from Saturday. That's going to be tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, and so Michael will be doing that by Zoom, but he'll be doing it on the phone as we're traveling. And so then we'll get another, if we do 4 hours tomorrow night, 5 hours in on Wednesday morning before we meet with Krista in St. Louis, Missouri, and see the grandbabies there for a few hours. And then we'll have another 4 hours to head on over to Kansas City, and we'll be there for the rest of the week as Michael J. is getting married on Saturday. And then we'll afterwards on sometime probably Sunday, we'll swing back down to Heartland. And then Monday evening and Tuesday, we'll be driving back to here. So probably Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Monday are going to be pre-recorded shows. I think we're going to put on the Beatitudes where Mark had us called into the show for 4 days, and they had an awesome discussion about the Beatitudes and went through them step by step. So we'll be playing that for the rest of the week, and if you all hold the space for us. But we will be live tomorrow, and then after that, we'll be doing some pre-recordings because there'll be so much going on. So thank you all so much. And I'm going to welcome Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here. And looking forward to seeing where the conversation gets steered today. Jean, do we have any hands up?
We do not. Several people on the switchboard, but no hands are up.
Cool. Well, I'm going to move in the direction of looking from another perspective at the importance of having accurate perception. And recognizing that perception is a construct of the mind, that, as I say often, our eyes are not showing us anything outside of us. It's not possible to see with your eyes. You see with your brain, and your brain generates its perception, the images that you see, based on the content resonated into activity by what's happening in the world. So, in essence, perception is a product of a resonance. Resonance says that when two energy fields are in tune or in harmony with each other, there's an exchange of information between them. You're probably familiar with an old saying that says, knowledge is power. And it's true, knowledge is power. And when you recognize the role that language plays and perception plays in what we call knowledge, it becomes pretty important to be on track with it. I've had many conversations with people over the years, and I look back to the times in this work when I used the word, and it's actually kind of, I'm realizing, is lazy language when we don't accurately define our words, when we're not using a word that really means what we're wanting to think about. And so when we use lazy language, because perception to a great degree is based on words. You know, go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and he says words are this important. The power of life and death, he says, is in your words. And maybe you could mute Jeannie. I'm hearing the keyboard in the background. So if the power of life and death is in your words, then obviously words, which are representations of frequencies, go to the opening words of the book of John that we've spoken about before, where it doesn't say in the beginning was the Word and the Word became flesh, but rather says in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. So the mind energy we engage in literally sets up the state of organization of our physiology through the way that it activates or deactivates genes. They're talking about epigenetics. What's above the gene? The gene, is a blueprint. It's a program. It can't do anything, but it can be drawn out into activity by whatever can resonate it into activity. So if one uses language in a lazy way, and here's a piece that, I've had conversation with so many people, and it's just, like pulling teeth to build the brain cells to get to the point of recognizing the importance of it. And, last year, if you were listening through the reading of the book, every time that I used the word love incorrectly, when I didn't understand the definition of love, and I used love to describe something we do to each other, as opposed to a word that describes the essence of our being. And so you'll recall several times that I corrected myself. So now, if I were rewriting the book, I'd be changing that word. If I'm using the word love to talk about how I feel about someone, I'd be correcting that and shifting it into the word cherish. Now I've got accurate language. But I've had conversations with, I don't know, at least 6 or 7 people come to mind who were in huge, no, love, no, it's how I feel, I love you. And it's like, well, I'm offering that's the lazy use of language. Because if you use the word that describes the state of your being to describe how you're feeling towards someone, you're in the lazy category of the use of language. You're not using words accurately. And the perception that comes from the lazy use of words is inaccurate perception. And if knowledge is power, and knowledge reflects in and as perception, it better be accurate information. It better be the accurate use of words, or your perception isn't going to be accurate, which means your knowledge is going to be in error. What you think you know is not going to operate properly, is not going to fulfill what you wish it to fulfill. So poor quality of perception, if you would say give the perceptual output of the mind a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. So my eyes are attuned to something, light energy comes in and brain cells fire, and I have a level 1 perception about whatever that is. So what would that look like? So, I typically use the idea of an accident. 6 different people were in a courtroom testifying about an accident. You wonder if any 2 were at the same accident. Their descriptors are so different. So a person who's in level 1 perception around that accident perhaps has let's say a prejudice against women drivers. And objectively, a man drove through a red light and hit this woman. But the person with a level 1 perception might actually see, and I mean literally what we call seeing, with a prejudice against women drivers, and if there's ever an accident, it has to be the woman who's cause. That man's perceptual construct, even though it didn't happen in the actual world, will show him literally a picture of the woman driving through the light and causing the accident. So when we're living in perception, our perception may be accurate about what's going on in the world of actuality, and it may be inaccurate about what's going on in the world of actuality. The thing that would tell you that you're at a level 1 on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of accurate perception would be the level of upset, the level of hostility or fear involved. You can bet in a raging, screaming fit, you're level 1 perception, and your perception is not even close to what is the actuality of the situation. As you were to forgive, as you were to remove the interfering energies of hostility or fear, your perception might go up to a 3, a 5, a 7, a 9. And once you get up to a 9, all of a sudden, this is where a person has the aha. It goes, oh my God, I thought it was this, and here it was something totally different. Knowledge. What we know or think we know to be true changes as perception steps up its accuracy. And if you want to really achieve a state where there is true knowledge, then you've got to have true perception. And true perception means that all of the data that the mind selects to give you information about the actuality that happened in a situation, or we're distinguishing between reality and actuality. Reality is the output of any given individual's mind. Actuality is what actually happened. So when we improve perception, then we can get to the point where all of the information that the mind gives us about the object of attention is true and accurate information. The mind is not interjecting errors. Where there's hostility or fear, the mind is always interjecting errors. When we get to the point where there is no hostility or fear, then there's a much better chance that your perception is going to be a level 7, 8, 9, or 10. And that would be where you experience picture that gives you only true and accurate information about what happened in the world of actuality, although it still is not what happened in the world of actuality. It's the mind's story about it. It's what's resonated in the mind. And if the information is accurate, it's going to be, somebody's got a whole lot better chance of being on track with their knowledge about whatever that particular situation is. And so that's why we're looking at, how well known has this principle been? Well, if you go back to Karl Marx and that whole philosophy, you hear his mentor saying, the way to destroy a culture is to change the meaning of its words. Poorly used language, lazy language, means poor perception. Poor perception means poor knowledge. Poor knowledge means no power here. And that's why oftentimes people will rail and rage against what they think is happening because they're feeling powerless. And when one is feeling powerless, nobody can come into your mind and take your power away. It's just not possible. But if you're feeling powerless, my offering would be that at birth, everybody was issued the same amount of power. Now, we can do one of two things. We can keep our power as free, available power, or we can blame someone else, and when we stand in that place of blame, we literally tie the creative energy we've got, our power, up in our brain's image of that person. And when one's tied up all of their power in their minds, they've got the same as any other mind, but once they've tied it up in their brain's image of everybody else in their blame game, then they feel powerless. If you're ever feeling powerless, notice that you've invested your power in blaming someone else for what you've created. And so to start to move out of that and get back to accurate knowledge, accurate information, accurate perception requires moving into a place where one honors truth, and then that impetus, the energy behind perception is keyed to love. When they said to Yeshua, what's most important in this law? And law, again, let's get rid of the lazy language. Law is not the rule of the superior, as kings would have you believe. In the ancient Aramaic, law is simply the way things operate. And so when they ask Yeshua, what's most important in the law of being human? He says, according to the Greeks, he says, you've got to love your neighbor, love yourself, love God. But that's totally and completely inaccurate language. That's not lazy language. That's just plain old-fashioned inaccurate language. In the Aramaic language, and it relates, he used the word Rakhma, and Rakhma is the filter, the gateway that love enters human form, so it is involved in love. It's involved in opening the space, but Rakhma is the filter that must stay open in order to move into accurate perception and in order to be present in your own physiology as the true presence of love. And so he's given us keys. And most people, when they hear about it, they get interested and they become believers. Oh, they just love it. It's so great, except where they've got inaccurate or hostile or fearful perceptions. And then the truth is they don't want anything to do with it. They'll say, oh, yes, I do. But in truth, they totally ignore, completely ignore. And then they wonder where their power went. They wonder why their knowledge is so flaky and why things aren't working in their world. So all of these things need to be brought into harmony. And, it's interesting. Many people who want to understand this teaching are kind of like, well, I understand that this is like the core of the search of the philosophers of thousands of years, and it's the most important key to living a human life and having a true human mind. So I've got $5 and 5 minutes. Tell me everything you know. And I want it yesterday, by the way. Don't make me go in and examine everything that's in my mind and ferret out my incorrect assumptions. Don't make me do that work. Let me be lazy. Tell me what I want to know, and then tell me it in a way that I can understand it in 5 minutes or less. Don't make me work for it. And, if you really want the answer of the ages, and think about it. Thousands of millions of brilliant minds have contemplated these things for eons, centuries and centuries. And the average person who's in their hostility and fear state and their lazy use of language says, and I got 5 minutes, tell me all about it. And I really want to understand it in 5 minutes. As opposed to, no, this is going to take a lifetime. When you start turning around 1,000 generations of inaccurate, hostile, and fearful perception, you're talking about a significant piece of work. It's not something that just, one gets knighted with and goes, oh, now I understand all of it. It's a process of opening to, it's kind of a combination of things. On one side, it's a dual process. It is literally cultivating your relationship with active present love. And then at the same time, facing, honestly, owning everything based in hostility or fear and working toward its removal, undoing the impact of denial. The impact of denial is that when I deny, and our definition of denial is when I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of something moving inside of me, the real cause I have to hide from myself. We call hiding the real cause of what's moving inside of you dissociation. So when I deny, I dissociate from this cause. And usually the causes we dissociate from the most deeply are the ones that hold the most pain. And so the closer one gets to those pained perceptions coming forward for correction, the more bizarre it gets, the more intense the hostility, the rage, the fear, the guilt becomes. And that's why we have a whole series of tools for literally weakening the energy fields that come from stored generational patterns from the past, weakening those and strengthening the energy fields that relate to conscious, active, present love, and having a body-mind unit that experiences you, doesn't, every time it thinks of love, think about loving someone, doesn't think about a verb, something they're going to do, but really is there to support you experiencing yourself as active, present love, and bringing that presence of love, that state of being forward, into a mind, into a body-mind unit that is, well, we can go back to a principle out of the ancient teachings. They talked about the Immaculate Conception. Now, a lot of people think that deal with a woman who'd never had sex but had a baby. And, of course, you got to create something miraculous for that one to happen. But the Immaculate Conception is really about how our minds, when they are free of hostility or fear, are no longer tainted by the past, and we have the ability to produce perception that is accurate, and not only accurate, but fueled purely by active love. And so perception moves into the realm, from degraded perception to accurate perception to enlightened perception. And enlightened means that the power behind our perceptual state is that of human life, that of active present love. There's the ideal place where knowledge is experienced as the most empowering, one of the most empowering processes you can engage in. And so everything has to line up. The physiology needs to be vital. The language needs to be on track. The breath needs to be moving. Rakhma needs to be set. We need to know who we are as active present love and be continuously choosing again and again and again and again to function as active love. If there is pain within the system, and most people, when they're in pain, what they want is just give me an anesthetic. It's interesting with alcohol. If you take 2 molecules of alcohol and take out the water, you've got ether. Now, ether's stuff they saw bones with. Pain is gone. That famous song about alcohol, feeling no pain. And someone who is addicted to alcohol, all it's saying is, I have so much pain in me that I can't stand it. I have to have something to anesthetize myself. Hand that person tools. I've seen it over and over and over again over the decades. You hand that person who's an alcoholic or a drug addict or an hostility addict, whatever it is that they use as a drug, and gradually, over time, they'll find the drug non-attractive because they experience the true state of being and what that feels like, and then they experience the drug state of being. And it's like, who would want a mind that's impacted by drugs, by alcohol, when we're given this just absolutely awesome device called the human mind that is, when you recognize the extent of history and the trillions upon trillions of human beings and other beings that have been on the earth down through the ages, that we're given the awesome opportunity to experience ourselves as conscious, active, present love, and to experience those around us and step into creatorship, step into creating a life out of that state. It's pretty awesome. But all those things have to line up underneath it in order to bring about the result. And that's why we have tools for each level, each piece of the puzzle. And so hopefully that will open the space for some conversation. Maybe it'll rattle a few brain cells for some folks. And if you're in the listening audience right now and that resonates a question for you, it would be awesome to hear your voice. And the way you do that, of course, is to push 1. If you're listening to us on your telephone, if you're not listening on your phone, but on one of those stations or you're tuned to, you can do this on the phone too, a station that we're broadcast from, but we don't have access to. We can't see you, and you can't talk directly to us. So if you're on one of those and you have something you'd like to share, a question or a thought, if you dial 563-999-3581, you'll be listening to the show, and then if you push 1, that will raise a hand in the control panel, and Jeannie will know that you want to talk to us. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have everybody in the phone queue with the hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
We do. We actually have 2 hands up. So the
awesome.
first one
Let's say hello.
is 760. This is Ann, I think. You're on the air.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome,
I want to
lady.
go back to... Hi, thanks. I want to go back to when you were talking about the perception earlier in your monologue,
yes.
And that's when I put my hand up because, and I'm glad you kept going because I wanted to see, well, is he going to go there anyway? But when you were talking about, the usual thing about 10 people seeing an accident and everybody takes away something different, so I'm realizing that it's the same thing with stories. So I just wanted you to. Talk about that more too. So I think one of the reasons that Yeshua put gossip in there, Paul or whoever was writing in the scriptures about, gossip is just as bad as any other sin, quote unquote, missing the mark of love, that it's because if we take it from one person and listen to what they say and then we go and repeat it to somebody else, something gets lost in it because now we're adding our own perception of what we just heard. So let alone ever having seen the event, right? Or let alone ever having heard the first conversation between 2 people, and now it gets imploded. Anyway, I wanted you to address that. So because I'm realizing as I go through the way of listening, the way of mastery, it's like, if all events are neutral, then, okay, it is my perception that's putting a value on it. Then I can do that with story, with anything that anybody tells me or I listen to. Okay, I'm complete.
Right. Well, the first thing that comes up is that in exactly the same way, and this is not something I normally get into. It doesn't come up very often, at least as often as the whole idea of what we see. But in the same way that seeing what the world of what we call visual input is done by the mind, that's generated by the mind, so is our listening. The truth is, nobody has ever heard a word anybody else has said because nobody has ever said a word in their lives. It's kind of like Einstein's idea of matter. On such things as matter, we've been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy. Energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. We don't live in a material world. We live in an energetic world. Now you say, I'm listening to your words, Michael, but the truth is your brain is doing the listening, and all I'm doing is causing a little flap of skin to move in my throat that causes a little microphone to move, that when it's received on your end causes a speaker to move, that causes your eardrum to move, and your brain makes up what you hear. So that's why we have a workshop called Communication. Did you hear what I think I said? Because literally, if you've got an audience of 100 people and just have a 2-minute event and then get everybody to stand up and describe what happened, there'll be no two who will say exactly the same things, because each brain generates the world we hear as much as it generates the world we think we see. And so it's the world we think we hear. And so recognizing that, it becomes important, again, to, especially in the arena of words and language, to be accurate, so at least there's some standard by which we can move in the direction of agreement on what our minds are feeding us. So that old, parlor game where somebody whispers into somebody's ear, who whispers. Well, if I whisper words in your ear, or I make that little flap of skin vibrate close to your ear, your brain cells will interpret and feed you a meaning. And then when you feed that meaning to the next person, their brain cells will feed them a meaning, and on it goes. And so, by the time it's gone through 10 people, you wouldn't recognize we're talking about the same thing. And that's why, because it's the brain that generates what we hear. It's not the words that another person says.
Yes. And thanks for the reminder. Yes, absolutely, because gone through that in the Laws of Living. And but that's a great reminder. And I've heard it, over the course even of, Dr. Tim has talked about it too. And it's like, okay, but I don't know if the word indoctrinated, I guess, society, or we're told or we're taught by our environment or our parents coming up that, words are words and this is what it means and you get all your feelings from it and yada, yada. But now, and I did go to another seminar that a gentleman here in Gainesville, actually out of Gainesville, and he talked about that, and he drew a little artsy thing of it, where the line came from the one person's mouth and went to the other person's ear. And so it was talking about that. So that visual comes to mind again. I go, oh, okay, absolutely. The frequency. Okay, thank you.
And then the brain cells that interpret.
Yeah.
So, cool. Good to refine the understanding. Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts for you today?
Nope, that's good. I'm enjoying.
Well, you have an awesome day. All right, thank you.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
So, Machini, you've got another hand up?
I do, and I believe it's Miss Susan, 610. You're on the air.
Hey. Hi, everybody.
Well, welcome, young lady. How are you?
Thanks. You've got an interesting itinerary coming up. My goodness.
It is. We're looking forward to it.
And a marriage. So great.
Yes.
So, I spent the week giving up goals, pretty much. Doing my own work and
a lot of
goals.
canceling, eh?
Yeah. I didn't get Jacob on the radio show once. He was listening, I thought, to part of Dr. Tim because we were together in the kitchen and I had the speaker on. But as soon as his lunch was ready, he just went right upstairs to his room where he spent most of his time. So the only times I had with him, he came downstairs a couple of times in the evening. He had some rehearsals, he had some activities outside, but he wasn't interested in visiting until he had a couple of drinks. And I know you were talking about addiction, and I'm listening with the biggest possible ears. He had a couple of drinks and he offered me a bong, some weed. And I said, Jacob, I would love to. I'd like to go there with you. I'd like to experience that and have my mind opened up in ways it probably never has. But I feel as if I've got such a delicate balance here in my mental health that I just don't dare. And he said, yeah, I get it. I do. So I said, but I'll go outside with you if you want to smoke. He doesn't smoke in the house. So we
Right.
sat outside, and he would talk about his life and his father and his fears and so forth. But there wasn't really any way that I could hook in and even offer a worksheet. The only
Right.
thing we talked about, there were two things. He understands what a power person is. And he said you by name. He said, you know, one thing you told me Michael Ryce said is that if you take the victim position, you're just not going to ever get anywhere. You cannot play the victim. And I thought, whoa, that's big. And I said, congratulations
That's
for
big.
remembering that. So, and he's moving forward. It's just, that's where the goal canceling comes, is it's just going much, much more slowly and strangely than I thought. And I say strangely because his youngest brother, who has had the best attention from his father, he was with his father all week, and I didn't hear a peep out of him. And I know why, because his father would be on his case if he knew that he was using father in some time, their part of the divorce agreement, to come over and see the other grandmother, or any grandmother for that matter. So suddenly on Friday night, when the clock ticks over to the other side, Max, the young one, could come over to my daughter's house. He walks in.
Right.
He's so articulate, and he told me about what's happening now. He said, now that I'm the only one in my father's house, I am getting what my older brothers got. And I saw it happening, but I never got it. And now I'm getting it. And he said, I'm older and I understand some things, but I am so trapped. And I have one more year of school where this arrangement has to stay in place.
Right.
And I know I could choose to leave, but my father is brilliant in his game playing, and he's so mentally ill. We will go on for maybe 6 months. It's been the best. 6 months, and we're getting along fine, and I love him, and I love his company. And then suddenly something will start to give, and he'll start little barbs, little guilt trips, and he'll start asking me to spend more and more time with him. And I'm in school, and I'm in a show, and I'm so busy, I need to study. And I'll explain to my dad, but he guilt trips me, and then it gets so bad that we have this huge blowout. And he told me about one where he ended up staying in his car all night. They had gone to look at colleges, and his father got mad at him for saying something. And he was so terrified to go back to the room that he spent most of the night freezing in the car, and finally crept into the hotel room when he hoped his father would be asleep. His father wasn't, but didn't say anything, just gave him the cold shoulder. Terrorizing. But he says, because of that, it isn't worth it to me to decide to live only with my mother. It'll be too awful. I've got to ride this out. And I know how to talk to him most of the time. Most of the time I can manage. But it is exhausting. He said, I'm exhausted, and I've had 2 true panic attacks. I've never had a panic attack, Michael. I thought I had, but I've had an anxiety attack. He said, out of the blue, my hands and feet started going numb. I felt lightheaded. I must have thrown up 12 times in total terror, but I didn't know what I was afraid of. And oddly enough, my father saw this happening and was wonderful to me. He's the only person I really feel as if I could get that sick in front of. He took such good care of me. And so it's such a paradox. This is a 17-year-old boy talking to me this way.
Wow.
So articulate. And then he starts talking to me about Jacob. He said, how's it been going? And I said, well, it really isn't going because, I'm cleaning up the house. I cleaned up the fridge. I cleaned the freezer, the pantry, did a lot of laundry. I'm loving being here. And I've met some of my daughter's friends who took me out to lunch, and that was just such a thrill. But Jacob has disappeared into his room, which he always did, and you and I talked about that. said, well, when I come over here, though, I'm not safe here because Max becomes just like my father. So there you have it. Max's well-being, childhood well-being, is such an issue for Jacob that Jacob hates him. He feels hatred for him, and he mistreats him. So Max feels as if he just has nowhere he can go that's safe. So he says, I love school. I feel safe at school. I'm going on a trip to Israel with my class, and I'm looking forward to it because it's 10 days away from my dad and away from Jacob. So Jacob, and he's not conscious because I got a chance to talk to Jacob about this. And Jacob said, I said, Max really needs an older brother who's caring of him and listening to him, his companion. Jake says, I do that. And I said, I hear other reports. And he said, like what? And I said, well, you go into his room at night, even when he's trying to sleep. You crawl into his bed, and you do weird things, not sexual things, but you started licking him one night. And Max says, Jacob has this weird, creepy side that I never saw before, and I don't know what to make of it. And I say, get out of my bed. Don't do this. Go sit in the chair. I'll talk to you, but you're not in my bed like this. And Jacob says, I didn't do that. And I think Jacob's telling me the truth. I think Jacob is going unconscious sometimes. So, Michael, you can tell I'm really, really concerned about these kids, and I'm constantly letting go of the goal of having a couple of older grandsons there. So that's the report, and thanks for listening. And I know we were going to talk about that, and here it is on the show.
Yeah. And are you able to process? It sounds like Max is quite conscious. Are you able to process with him? So he's he's able to get a leg up on it then.
He thinks he's got a great therapist, and he's now on Lexapro, which is a beta blocker, he said, and it'll help him not have one of those panic attacks again. He said, I don't want to stay on this. I want to understand what's going on, but I cannot go through another one of those. So I thought, well, there's probably the right use of a drug. He's never smoked. He's never drunk. He's never had weed, and he's not going to. He sees what happened to his brothers, and he's not going to go there. But, he's suffering. His grades have fallen a bit, and he's under a lot of stress. So I'd love to process with him. I'm not, yeah, go ahead.
The highest piece of information I think you could give him, and, that kind of checking out thing, the numbness and all, would be ultra stress, would be to have him understand that the way stress is created is by holding goals. And that he can just, without getting into the whole worksheet or the whole forgiveness process, just look on a daily basis, at night before you go to bed, and just cancel all your goals. And then in the morning, set the goals that you're going to use for the day, but don't set any more than you can handle for the day, so you keep your stress at manageable levels. And that might be an opening, the starting point for him to, okay, I didn't know, I thought situations cause stress, this is our culture, and they talk all the time about, well, that's stressful situation. Well, no, there's no such thing as a stressful situation. But there are situations where all kinds of goals come up for me, and I'm ultra stressed. If I know that and I can remove those goals, then I can be in that situation and not experience the results of being ultra stressed.
That's great.
So I would think that would be, one piece you could give him. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
Sounds like a bright young man.
Helpful. Very bright, emotionally very intelligent. He is having to be the parent of his father. Now, his father has had talk about Dr. Sarno. His father has had probably 6 back operations, neck and back operations for his rage. And he's in the hospital right now with a spinal fusion in his lower back, and he's turning 60, and he's making his son into a parent. He cries in front of him, says he's going to end up alone. Nobody stays with him. He doesn't seem to understand why. He doesn't seem to know that he does stuff. And yet, in other ways, he's the most brilliant man. So And here we are up here. But Max says, when I get out of high school, I'm heading out. I'm going to go to college far away.
Yeah.
That'll be my freedom, he says. So that's a great idea, though, Michael. I wrote it down.
It also sounds like Jacob is really taking on Dad's role of the trauma inducer. Like he's playing the power person with Max.
Yeah, he is.
And I don't know if there's room for him. You say that Jacob understands the power person dynamic, then maybe there'd be space to let him know that he's just playing out what Dad played with him. He's playing out with Max, and it's time for a change. It's time to honor your brother in a different way and give you both of you some relief rather than just playing that out.
Yeah. I did have a couple of short talks with him along those lines, and I may have access again because he's decided he's going to a summer theater program in New York City, and he's going to use us as a stop, and he may even be here by next week for a week or two. So I'm really
awesome.
I'm setting up more goals, goals to be here for him, go for walks. Anyway, that's basically the report.
Any chance of just getting with him and breathing him? If he comes to visit,
how I think at that.
Well, but you don't have to be the one breathing, but you could guide him in doing it. You could take that energy field work and, assist and energetically in him if the young man could learn to breathe, if you can't get to him cognitively, just the trauma that he'll be able to process just by breathing will be monumental.
Okay, I'm taking notes.
And you might, when he comes to visit, might put forward the thought of, I've been learning this thing called energy field work, and I don't have too many places to practice it. Would you let me practice it on you? You've got the diagrams and the energy field worksheets, and maybe practice it with them. And as you're practicing it, it's like, I notice you're not breathing. Why don't you breathe a little bit? Breathe with me while I do this. It'll help to open up what I'm learning. And who knows what might crack open if you give him that gift.
Yeah, well, you'd never know, because that remark about being a victim, he's really running with it. So he's not blaming his father anymore. He's just becoming him every once in a while, and he's still hiding out in his room. But he's not processing, really. He's just reacting.
Right.
So, but on another level, he's very functional. He was in a concert last night. He learned the music at the last minute and did a beautiful job. And so when he puts his mind to it, he seems there. So anyway.
Well, that old thing of life without tools. And so just every opportunity that you can sneak in a tool that he's got something to work with, and things will move upward for him. That's the space I would hold for both of them.
Great.
And how's your daughter doing?
Very available. Well, she finished the Bishop Walkabout, and the conclusion, they'll be voting this week, and by Saturday she'll know whether she's going to be the next Bishop of Connecticut. She did beautifully. They had these long Zoom. I must have watched 10 hours of interviews. I was watching.
Really? Wow.
And the candidates are all very impressive. I think my daughter has the widest spectrum of gifts. She's not only a priest and a pastor and an excellent preacher, but she's savvy about inner city development, using the wealth of the church to redistribute, make amends, go into the inner cities and share the wealth in the inner city churches. She's like,
Sweet.
she has a staff of 25 people, and that's what the Diocese of Connecticut has. The diocese has 25 people on their staff, and she said, I already know how to manage a staff of 20. She really blew her own horn in the most wonderful way. She just said, this is what I can do.
That's awesome.
I'd be a good bishop for you. She wasn't she wasn't embarrassed, but she wasn't gross about it either. She was just perfect. She's done so many things I don't do very well, and I was proud of her. So whether she gets it or not, it's just she did a great job. So thanks. Yeah.
Nice.
And she was glad
and I see she's getting married.
Yeah, she is. A boyfriend from high school contacted her as soon as she announced her divorce and said, I'd love to talk. And she said, sure. Next thing you know, they've fallen in love. I know you don't believe in it, but it happened.
A sweet reunion. Awesome.
Yeah, I know.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Wonderful. And he was with her the whole time. During every interview. They had to go virtual at the last minute because one of the spouses got COVID and they couldn't do the physical visits to all the towns. So they went virtual and they went right back to his house in Hartford and they did the whole thing out of his house. He set up a little studio for her so she looked very professional. Very cute.
Nice. What great support.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I know. It is. It's totally wonderful. So a lot of happy stuff. But the worksheets, I mean, I must have done, 8. I've been doing more than 5 most days. So they're just sort of like ongoing. It's a way of approaching anything, any twinge, and I'm into a worksheet. So good tool.
And what output are you seeing? And I'm asking you to share that so that others get a taste of what it is to pick up and commit to doing 5 worksheets a day.
Well, it becomes a new way of organizing thoughts. Number one, it becomes a way of becoming conscious of a bad feeling before you would have been otherwise. I can go around for half a day sort of off kilter and not even look at it. And now as soon as there's a twinge, I say, uh-oh, time for a worksheet. What's this one about? And as a result of doing them, a lot of memories have come up that I hadn't remembered before. A striking thing, and it's probably pretty common, is that most issues go right back to a few basic situations in childhood, but always from different angles. It's like it's fleshing out the whole thing. What else can I say?
Well, the thought that occurs,
goals. Yeah.
Right. Well, Paul talks about be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and it sounds like you're just constantly in that renewal state, and that's awesome. That's powerful.
I did spend a lot of time in Florida feeling anxious for, and doing worksheets. I said, here I am in this beautiful place. I've got a grandson holding up in his room upstairs. Why am I so anxious? Giving up goals of having Jacob come downstairs, of having him talk. I never said a word about the drinking. He came home and said his psychiatrist said that he should cut down to 2 glasses of wine max a night. And I was surprised that it was that lenient, but I said, do you think you can do that? And he said, I'm going to try. I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try. So I said, that's great. So he doesn't think of me as a judgmental parent he tells me when he's drinking and he tells me when he's smoking.
Right.
So that's good, I guess.
Now, didn't you guys have an agreement at one point where you gave up sugar and he was giving that stuff up?
Yes, and it didn't. I've still given up my sugar because I feel so different when I'm on it and not. But he hasn't honored his end of it. And I said to him, I'm honoring my side. So that's all I can do.
Did you have any conversations with
do?
inviting him to ask him to be in integrity with his word? And that can be done gently and respectfully and even playfully.
Good. I'm glad you added that. Yeah.
It's like, come on now, you gave me your word and I'm sticking to it and I'm going to control you. I'm going to bug you until you do too. It's like, stop it. You said you were stopping it. I did. Let's get on this. And, you could do it playfully and laugh at it, have fun with it instead of being judgmental about it. And, maybe share some of the benefits you're experiencing from giving up your drug. And invite him to share some of the benefits he's experiencing.
Good idea.
And also I think a really deeply heartfelt statement of why you want that for him, what you want for him. Oftentimes when the mind is, boggled by drugs and alcohol, the capacity for vision is gone. And, you might be able to hold a vision for his life that allows him to reconnect. One of the things I've been studying and reading about a little bit lately is newborns and co-sleeping. And one of the things they've discovered with newborns is that when a newborn sleeps alone, they sometimes forget how to breathe or how to keep their heart in rhythm. It's like it's not a habit yet. And that one of the benefits of co-sleeping, of sleeping with a parent, is the energetic rhythm of the mother's heart. Literally, the baby's heart entrains, the breath entrains, so that, that habit is developed physiologically. And so, who knows what the possibilities are.
God, that's gorgeous, and I feel very sad about the fact that so many of us babies, when we were babies, didn't do that. Too bad.
It's crazy. There's a video, actually, Jeannie and I just watched it a couple of nights ago, and it's available on, you can rent it for $3 on YouTube. If you're on Amazon Prime, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. And it's called The Milky Way. And it was interesting. It started out, I didn't know how the Milky Way became named the Milky Way. But actually it was, and I'm not sure the Greek characters, but it was Zeus and his wife, and Zeus had an affair or something. Now, I may not have the gods' names correctly, but whichever god it was, had an affair, had a baby, and brought the baby home and put it on his wife's breast while she was sleeping. And she woke up and was so upset, she tore the child away, and the spray from her breast sprayed out and became the Milky Way, all the stars in the Milky Way. Which I thought was kind of an interesting little. I wasn't aware of that piece of history, but it goes from there to the importance of breastfeeding a child and the insanity that's happened, the profit motive that's come in for medicine, for the manufacturers of formula and such. And one of the things that they brought up in it was one of the Fox channels did some research on SIDS in cases where a child died while sleeping in bed with a parent. And they put up during the film, was it because the parents were drinking? Was it because they were sleeping on the couch? Was it because the baby had formula? Or was it because, some other factor?
Yeah.
The common link in every child that they researched that had died was they were on infant formula.
I'm not surprised.
So it just ties together a whole lot of things, and the importance of, the craziness that happened back in the 50s and 60s when, these doctors came out with their pronouncements about, formula is better and blah, 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 blah. And the whole thing about, as a culture, honoring women instead of sexualizing breasts, to honor women and honor babies and bring them into our culture and bring them into our, our lives, our workplaces, and everything else, instead of there being a stigma attached to something as simple as breastfeeding. But it's a powerful video.
Wow.
The Milky Way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, young lady. Well, we're at the last minute, so I appreciate you, cherish you, and we're here to hold the space. And everybody have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings.